So in this video I'll be replacing the spark plugs in the Dacia Sandero, and that's also the same engine that's often in the Renault Clio. So the first thing to do is remove the spark plugs, and I'll start by actually opening the bonnet, which is done from the passenger side, and then at the front in the middle we've just got to push the safety catch over to the left, and the bonnet opens on a hydraulic strut, which is quite handy. So we'll have a quick view here of the air filter housing, the gearbox breather hose, and there's also another breather hose there, and also note the 4 HT leads. So we'll start by unclipping the gearbox breather hose so we don't damage that when we lift up the air filter housing, and then we'll just pull that pipe off there, and then using a 7mm socket we can just undo that Jubilee clip like so. Now we should better just, there is another hose there that's actually missing on my car, so you might want to remove that like I did fictitiously there, and then the housing is just lifted up and pushed to the right like so. I'm going to have a quick look at the underside of that so we can see what we're looking at. There we are, and pop that to one side. So we'll just have a look at cylinder 1 HT lead there, because it's on the flywheel side and not the timing belt side, which is normally the case. So Renault have done this slightly differently. So we'll just remove our HT leads. Now ideally don't pull those from the actual leads, try and pull it from the thicker part. And we just remove the spark plug. So this is number 4. And we put that to one side, and then we just work our way through. You can actually see the numbers there on the HT leads, which is quite handy because, like I say, this is quite unconventional, because normally cylinder 1 is at the timing belt side. So not quite sure why on the French cars cylinder 1 is normally the flywheel, but anyway, so that's the way it is. So we've nearly got this one off. There we go, that's the last one off. And the final spark plug is out. So just put those to one side. And we're going to get our new spark plugs now. But what we will do is just compare them to the old ones, because you never know. So it's always worth just giving them a bit of a eye over, just to check they actually look obviously the same. And then obviously check the gap of the spark plugs, because you never know if they've got knots at all. So it's worth just going through each one and checking like so. So there is slightly different thicknesses between the 8 valve and the 16 valve, which I've obviously mentioned in the video. And then we can just simply refit the new spark plugs. Now they do say don't use anti-seize paste. So I'm going to go for 20 Newton meters, because these threads are quite oily. So I'm just going to make an allowance for the oil. So if I go for 20 Newton meters, I won't be over tightening them, because obviously the worst thing you can do is over tighten them and possibly damage the thread and the cylinder head. That really would give you a job. So we'll pop those in. Now I normally put them in and just rotate left first, just to make sure it's seated correctly, and then turn it right. And then we just torque all of those up till we get our click. You definitely really want to use a torque wrench for this, because like I say, you don't want to over tighten these. That would be some job. And then we can just pop our HT leads back in. Might be worth putting new ones in if they're quite old, because they can sort of go fragile and brittle. There we are, so they're back in, and then it's a case of just popping the air filter housing back on. Obviously put your front pipe on as well if you've got one. Obviously I got this car from dubious sources, like my stepdaughter, and there's no pipe there, so would like to know where that is, Sean. But anyway, it's missing now. But there we are. So we've got our breather pipe on. Just pop our gearbox breather hose back on, like so. And then we'll just start the engine. Now obviously this engine had a knocking sound, and this is what the whole series is about. And changing the spark plugs is just part of the series because they desperately need doing. Now it does sound a little bit quieter. It's certainly not knocking as loud as it was. But obviously I'm not sure. Spark plug that was in cylinder number 2 was very badly damaged. So I'm not sure if it was that was leading to the knocking sound. But it definitely seems a bit quieter. There is a slight knocking. But I think my next job now will be to take the cam cover off and at least adjust the valves and possibly replace the valve guide seals. Because I think there's oil getting into the combustion chamber. So I think I'll have to address that. But anyway, so here's some handy information on the spark plugs, and as always, here's my reference photographs, which you can pause to view for longer. So we obviously start there with the overview of the engine. We've got our air filter housing, the gearbox breather hose, and the other breather hose. And there's our HT leads numbered. And they're also numbered there with the yellow dots. I put those paint marks on. And so these are the new spark plugs. And we've got some measurements there just for reference, just in case you need to know. And there we are. So, like I say, this is also the engine that's often used in the Clio, the Renault D4F. And you've been watching part 3 of diagnosing a loud knocking sound on this 2014 Dacia Sandero with that D4F engine. And thank you for watching and supporting my channel, and please like and subscribe. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in September 2023, and I can be found on Instagram, Facebook and X as Coats and Gators.